The Womack brothers, lust, betrayal, and the legacy that ripped a family apart. This is the disturbing true story that music history tried to bury, a tale of chart-topping hits and bottomless heartache. What began in gospel ended in gunfire, scandal, and estrangement. The Womack brothers, Sam Cooke, Mary Wells, and their children were all entangled in a saga of lust, betrayal, and unresolved grief that would echo across generations. The details are raw, the truths are hard. And once you start watching this video, it becomes impossible to look at these music legends the same way again. The Burning Brothers, Early Exposure and Emotional Naivete. In his memoir, Midnight Mover, Bobby Womack recalled a formative and unsettling incident from his youth. He and his brothers had reportedly all contracted a venereal disease from the same woman. At the time, they were still teenagers, raised in a household where sex was never discussed, and shame was deeply rooted in religion. The woman, described by Bobby as a floozy, became a cautionary figure in their lives. While the story is often repeated with humor or embarrassment, it points to something deeper. The Womack brothers were ill-equipped to navigate adult relationships. That early exposure to sex without understanding or emotional maturity likely contributed to patterns of blurred boundaries and poor choices that would haunt their adult relationships, including Bobby's controversial entanglements with both Barbara and Linda Cooke. Harry Womack, the first tragedy. The first major loss for the Womack family came on March 9, 1974. Harry Womack, known as the quietest and most reserved of the brothers, was stabbed to death by his girlfriend during a violent argument. She allegedly discovered another woman's panties, which turned out to belong to Bobby Womack's girlfriend. The tragic misunderstanding ended Harry's life at age 28. The grief struck the family hard and set a somber tone for the entangled misfortunes that would follow. Mary Wells and Cecil Womack. Love, divorce, and family consequences. Mary Wells was once dubbed the First Lady of Motown. Her hit My Guy helped define the sound of the early 1960s, and she became a musical icon before her 25th birthday. But her career took a sharp turn after she left Motown in 1964. She never quite regained her early momentum, though she remained beloved, especially among Latino communities, where her later ballads found new life. Mary married Cecil Womack in 1966, and the two had 3 children. Their marriage eventually crumbled, and following their divorce, Mary entered into an affair relationship with Curtis Womack, Cecil's brother, while still married according to her biography. She would also mention that she felt suicidal about this illicit affair because Cecil and Curtis were both suffering. She had another child with Curtis, a daughter who was both half-sister and cousin to her other children. It was a family dynamic that mirrored the tangled personal relationships surrounding them. When Mary was diagnosed with cancer, Motown reportedly stepped in to help pay for some of her treatments, a gesture of complicated loyalty from the label that once launched her. Still, by many accounts, Mary did not consistently take care of her health in the years following. The emotional weight of illness, financial strain, and fractured family ties seemed to wear her down. Cecil remained present sporadically, but by the time of her death in 1992, he had long since remarried and relocated to Africa. That left Mary's children, especially the eldest, to shoulder the responsibility. One of her daughters helped raise her younger half-sister cousin, born from the affair with her uncle. It's a burden that was both emotional and symbolic, carrying the legacy of a mother who had been failed by the industry and by her own complicated personal life. Sam Cooke, Barbara Campbell, Linda and Bobby Womack, a tangled legacy. Sam Cooke first met Barbara Campbell when he was 18 and she was just 13, on the south side of Chicago. Despite the significant age difference, their teenage relationship eventually became a marriage, though not without complications. Barbara gave birth to their daughter Linda at age 17. The two would later marry in 1959, although both had been married and divorced before. Sam's father, Reverend Charles Cooke, reportedly disapproved of the marriage. His father felt that Barbara was too adventurous. Sam's first wife, who would become his ex-wife, unfortunately who would meet an ultimately early death, Sam would go on and pay for her funeral, even though he had moved on with Barbara. This act, while thoughtful, raises questions about Barbara's emotional position. Would any wife today be comfortable with that kind of gesture? It may have contributed to the underlying strain in their relationship. Though Barbara was Sam's only legal wife, 3 other women had daughters by him. After their baby Vincent tragically drowned in 1963, Barbara and Sam's union continued under pressure until Sam's death in December 1964, under suspicious and still debated circumstances at the Hacienda Motel in Los Angeles. Only 3 months after Sam's funeral, Barbara married 19-year-old Bobby Womack, Sam's protege. She was 29. Bobby had known the Cooke family since he was 10 years old. At their courthouse wedding, Bobby wore one of Sam Cooke's suits. The backlash was immediate and severe. Bobby was blackballed from much of the industry and shunned publicly. His career suffered, although artists like Ray Charles helped him find work quietly. According to Bobby's own memoir, My Story, Barbara proposed the marriage and told him, "Just give me 5 years." Bobby compared the situation to The Graduate, where a young man is seduced by an older woman. The relationship drew scrutiny for its timing, emotional complexity, and imbalance of power. Barbara and Bobby had a child together and named him Vincent, after the baby Barbara had lost with Sam Cooke. This decision reflected grief and attachment, but it also highlighted unresolved emotional trauma. At the time of their marriage, Linda Cooke was only 12 years old, and Bobby had assumed the role of stepfather. Years later, Bobby admitted Barbara caught him sneaking out of Linda's bedroom. Though he described the encounter as consensual, the facts are deeply troubling. He had known Linda since she was a child. He was in a position of authority, and she was underage. Some allege that Bobby Womack sexually assaulted Linda, though this was never legally verified. Still, the implications remain disturbing. At one point, Barbara fired a gun at Bobby, reportedly after learning about his involvement with Linda, an act that suggests she attempted to defend her daughter despite her own questionable decisions. In the years that followed, Bobby said neither he nor Linda spoke to Barbara anymore. In an article released after Barbara's death, Bobby stated, "No one speaks to her anymore." What caused this estrangement? Was Barbara shunned because of the choices she made? Or were her children traumatized by the emotional turmoil they endured? Linda and Cecil Womack, the Zechariahs and the children left behind. Eventually, Linda Cooke married Cecil Womack, Bobby's brother and Mary Wells's ex-husband. By the time Linda and Cecil married, Cecil had already fathered children with Mary. Their new marriage created an unusual family structure. Linda, the daughter of Sam Cooke and Barbara Campbell, now married to the brother of her stepfather and the ex-husband of the mother of her niece cousin. Linda and Cecil would go on to form the musical duo Womack and Womack, eventually adopting the African spiritual name Zacharias. They relocated to Africa and reportedly immersed themselves in tribal culture and spirituality. Some observers have asked a deeper question. Was this really a new beginning, or just another chapter in a generational pattern of interwoven trauma and constrained choices? Their marriage seemed almost inevitable within the insular world of connected families. Was it cultural proximity, trauma bonding, or simply the environment they grew up in, one where love, loss, betrayal, and family were folded into the same corner of the industry? Cecil would eventually die abroad and was reportedly buried in Africa. Meanwhile, the children from Linda and Cecil's marriage returned to the United States. Some would go on to befriend artists like Solange Knowles, connecting their lineage to a new generation of Black talent. Yet for the children, the family dynamic remained complicated. Their half-siblings were the children of Mary Wells, making them cousins and half-siblings simultaneously. When Mary Wells died, the older daughter had to help raise the younger child, who was also her cousin. Their father was absent, living in another country. Their mother, Mary, was gone. The emotional consequences of that fractured upbringing are rarely addressed, but they sit at the heart of this family's legacy. Youth, power, and the era of silenced consent. One of the most haunting aspects of the Womack-Cooke family saga lies in the recurring thread of underage relationships between teenage girls and significantly older men. From Barbara Campbell meeting Sam Cooke at age 13, to Linda Cooke's alleged relationship with her adult stepfather, to other notorious cases in the era of black music, a pattern begins to emerge, one that was rarely questioned at the time, but demands scrutiny today. In the 1950s and 1960s, age of consent laws varied widely across the United States. Cultural norms were different, especially in religious or Southern households, where young women were often romantically pursued, and sometimes married, by much older men. These relationships were romanticized, spiritualized, or simply accepted as part of life. People today still recall falling in love at 14 with a soldier, as if it were the plot of a beloved film. But when held to modern ethical standards, many of these scenarios point to deeply problematic power dynamics. Sam Cooke was 18 when he began seeing Barbara Campbell, then 13. Years later, Bobby Womack, himself just 19, was pulled into a relationship with Barbara and later became entangled with Linda, who was only 12 when he entered the household as her stepfather. Whether driven by trauma, naivete, or emotional confusion, these unions raise unavoidable questions. Did these young women ever have the chance to grow up? Were their decisions truly their own? Or were they shaped by the pressures of grief, dependency, and the power of older male figures? These stories are not unique to the Womack family. David Ruffin of The Temptations reportedly had a child with an underage woman. Elvis Presley began courting Priscilla Beaulieu when she was 14. Jerry Lee Lewis famously married his 13-year-old cousin. And Johnny Taylor, who was handpicked by Sam Cooke himself to replace him in the Soul Stirrers, who also was signed to Bobby Womack's record label, would go on to father a child with a 14-year-old out of North Carolina, while on tour in his early 20s. Bobby Womack was a family friend of Johnny Taylor's daughter from North Carolina as well. These were not hidden scandals. They were often public knowledge, swept under the rug by stardom and accepted social customs. In hindsight, these relationships reflect a time when youth was misunderstood as maturity, and when older men's control over younger women was normalized, especially in the entertainment industry. The line between love and exploitation blurred under the glow of fame and the weight of broken families. Understanding this context is not about retroactive judgment, it's about honesty. The experiences of girls like Linda Cooke, and even Barbara herself, reveal how entire generations of young black women were thrust into adult relationships long before they had the power to navigate them. Their stories aren't just scandalous, they're tragic, and they deserve to be remembered for the truth they reveal. A legacy of love, loss, and unresolved trauma. The Womack family story is more than music. It's a chronicle of survival. From Friendly Senior's gospel teachings to Bobby's rise and fall, to Harry's murder, Linda's early trauma, and Mary Wells's faded glory, the Womack name is synonymous with brilliance and tragedy. Was this just the price of fame, or was it something deeper? A generational pattern of unresolved grief, broken trust, and blurred roles. Whatever the case, their music lives on. But behind every hit song lies a deeper, often painful truth that no chart position can explain. Scope News sources. Scope News tells the truth. Here are the facts. Special thanks to these sources that help preserve and illuminate the complicated legacy of Black American music history. Reports and statements were drawn from Bobby Womack's autobiography, Midnight Mover and Bobby Womack, My Story. Additional verification came from Jet Magazine archives, Los Angeles Times obituaries, Motown historical records, and interviews conducted with Mary Wells during her later years, including her unsung episode. Public commentary and testimony around Linda Cooke, Cecil Womack, and the Womack family dynamic were gathered from various oral histories, music retrospectives, and archival interviews. Media coverage surrounding Harry Womack's 1974 murder and Sam Cooke's death in 1964 were also consulted from historic editions of the LA Times, Chicago Defender, and Rolling Stone magazine. Finally, online documentation from African American cultural archives, digital obituaries, and rare video footage, some recorded by Mary Wells herself, shed light on aspects of this story that remain emotionally unresolved and historically underexamined. Legal disclaimer. This video essay is presented for educational, informational, and historical research purposes. It is based on publicly available information, archival reports, interviews, memoirs, and media coverage. While care has been taken to reflect the facts accurately, some claims referenced in memoirs or interviews may represent personal recollections, interpretations, or unverified allegations. Viewer discretion is advised due to the sensitive and potentially disturbing nature of the topics discussed, including trauma, abuse, death, and sexual misconduct. This content is not intended to defame, harm, or make speculative conclusions about any individuals mentioned. It seeks to highlight the complex legacy of Black music families and the historical circumstances surrounding their lives. Some details may include information that was never legally verified, but is part of the public discourse or cultural record. All individuals are presumed innocent unless proven otherwise in a court of law. The creators of this content do not endorse any illegal actions and encourage responsible engagement with sensitive historical narratives.